Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I don't know. I think we kind of rumbled last night. What do you think? Thank you. I had a lot of fun last night, but I am really delighted to be with all of you this afternoon. You know, Eric just said that I've gained something of a reputation for answering questions and for going on any show, and I've also gained a reputation maybe for saying some things that other people aren't prepared to say. So one of my first speeches, I was thinking about this today, one of my very first speeches, it was at CPAC. I know many of you were there, and I asked this question of Hillary Clinton. Mrs. Clinton, flying is an activity, not an accomplishment. Please name an accomplishment. And you know, we don't have an answer yet. We don't have an answer yet. Or then there was that Saturday morning when I was asked on a national television show whether I thought a woman's hormones prevented her from serving in the Oval Office. And my response was, gee, can anyone think of any instance in which a man's judgment might have been clouded by his hormones? Including in the Oval Office. And then there was the time that I went on The View. I know. But you know, as one of your previous panels said, sometimes we have to go where people don't know they agree with us yet. And I was asked on The View, Rosie O'Donnell, who I really like, Rosie Perez, I'm sorry, who I really like, not Rosie O'Donnell, that was last night's debate. Sorry, Rosie Perez. Anyway, Rosie Perez said, you know, I really like you. Why are you a conservative? You know that tone people get. I like you. I think I agree with you. Why are you a conservative? And I said this. I said, I'm a conservative because I know no one of us is any better than any other one of us. Each of us are gifted by God. All of us want to live lives of dignity and purpose and meaning. And I know that our values, our principles, and our policies work better to lift everyone up. It's fair to say that Rosie and many in the audience were surprised by that answer. It's also fair to say, as I said last night, that 2016 is going to be a fight, a real fight, between conservatism and the progressivism that has completely dominated the Democrat Party and that is now not only undermining the character of our nation, but crushing the potential of this nation. You see, progressives don't believe what I just said. They don't believe that no one of us is any better than any other one of us. In fact, if you look at their policies, if you look at how they talk about things, how they talk about people, whether it's what they're doing to defend Planned Parenthood or how they continue to support the teachers' unions, no matter what they say, the core message is this. Some of us are smarter than others. Some of us are better than others. Some of you really can't live lives of dignity and purpose and meaning, but don't worry, some of us are going to take care of the rest of you. It is the height of disrespect and disregard, and it is the fight we must have in 2016. You know, sometimes we tend to think of politics as a game, as sport, you know, and everybody got ready for fight night last night. You know, it kind of feels like a sport and a game. The only thing is, of course, politics, while it sometimes can be fun like a sport or maybe disappointing like a sport, it's not a game. Because politics and politicians and the policies they pursue impact every single person's life. We are at a pivotal point in our nation's history. We must win in 2016. And in order to win, we're going to have a nominee who throws every punch, who will not ever pull her punches. We're going to have a nominee who will point out Hillary Clinton's lack of accomplishment. We're going to have a nominee who points out that she is not trustworthy. And yes, indeed, as I told Chris Matthews over and over again last night on MSNBC, she did lie about Benghazi, she did lie about her emails, and she did lie about her server. And we're also going to have a nominee who is prepared to take on every mythology of the Democrat Party, whether it's the war on women or they're the party who care most about African Americans or Hispanics or the poor. The truth is the Democrats have been bad. Bad for women, bad for African Americans, bad for Hispanics, bad for economic growth, opportunity, and respect in this nation. That's what we need to win this job. I can win this job. But then we have to have someone who can do the job, because the job needs doing now. And I think to do this job in 2016, at a pivotal point in our nation's history, we need someone who actually understands how the economy works, who understands that when we tangle people's lives up in webs of dependence, we are not only hurting them, we are hurting everyone in this nation, who understands that the real engine of economic growth in this nation is not big companies. Crony capitalism is crushing the engine of economic growth in this country, which is, and always has been, small businesses, community-based businesses, family-owned businesses. Many of you know that I started out as a secretary in a 9-person real estate firm. My husband, Frank, who I've been married to for 30 years, started out driving a tow truck in a family-owned auto body shop. It is how most people start. So when we crush that engine of economic growth, and we're now destroying more small businesses than we're creating for the first time in U.S. history, we crush opportunity for everyone. Someone who understands that in order to educate our children for the 21st century, we have to give every single parent a choice so every child has a chance. We need somebody who understands how the world works and who's in it. And as I have pointed out many times to Mrs. Clinton, among others, I know more world leaders on the stage today than anyone running. Only I didn't do photo ops like Mrs. Clinton did. I had serious substantive meetings. And that's why I know it is so critical that on day one in the Oval Office, the President of the United States sends an unmistakable signal. And I will do so by making 2 phone calls. One to Bibi Netanyahu to assure him we will stand with the State of Israel. The other phone call will be to the Supreme Leader of Iran. He might not take my phone call, but he will get the message. And the message is New Deal. New Deal. Until you open every nuclear and military facility to full and unfettered inspections, we will make it as hard as possible for you to move money around the world. We need an unmistakable signal that America is back in the leadership business. We need a president. We need a president who understands bureaucracies, how to hold them accountable and cut them down to size, because the federal government has become one giant, bloated, corrupt bureaucracy. And we need somebody who understands technology, which is a great tool, but it's also a weapon that's being used against us. And finally, and perhaps most importantly of all, we need someone who understands what leadership is. Yes, it is sometimes a tough call in tough times with high stakes for which you are prepared to stand and be held to account. I have a track record of leadership, but the highest calling of leadership is to challenge the status quo. We need someone who can challenge the status quo of Washington, D.C., not someone who's been in the political process all their lives. The highest calling of leadership as well is to unlock the potential of others. We need a leader in the Oval Office who understands their highest calling is to unlock the potential of this great nation. With your help and your support, I will lead the resurgence of a great nation. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
So they took you seriously. I got a stack of questions.
Are we sitting in the armchair?
Do you want to sit or you want to stand? I've been standing asking the questions. All right. Alex from St. Petersburg, Florida. Why? Okay, so we have. I can't read the handwriting, Alex. I'm sorry. Bob. Hey, Bob from Pennsylvania. How do you reduce the power of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, it's a loaded question, but not so much. First of all, what does the Chamber of Commerce do? Remind me. See, I asked the question because here's the truth. Every single agency of government has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more powerful year after year after year. And the truth is, we barely know what some of them do anymore. And let us tell the truth, this has been going on for 40 years under Republicans and Democrats alike, which is why I think we need now to move to systemic solutions, big levers we got to pull to cut bureaucracies down to size. The first two that I think are critically important. Number one, we got to know where our money is being spent and what it's being spent on. It's called zero-based budgeting. Because the truth is, we're spending way too much in some places and not enough in others. You know, we need to reinvest in our military, for example, so that everybody knows we have the strongest military on the face of the planet. But here's the thing. Every time something important needs to be done in government, what does the federal government tell us? I need more money. You want me to secure the border? We need more money. You want me to invest in the military? We need more money. You want me to build highways and bridges? We need more money. No, the government needs less money. So we need to look at where the money is being spent. Zero-based budgeting. What's the second lever that needs to get pulled? Remember when the VA scandal broke in Arizona a year and a half ago, right? Everybody was outraged, as they should have. The VA has been a stain on our nation's honor for decades. But that particular story got everybody riled up, and within 3 short weeks, the political class did what? They came together and passed a bipartisan bill that said what? We could fire the 400 senior executives in the VA. Now, ladies and gentlemen, nobody's been fired much. But what a great idea. Let's do that all throughout the federal government. That's a lever that needs to get pulled.
Jackie from Murfreesboro, Tennessee says, you've eloquently taken on Hillary Clinton. Could you as eloquently explain the way the world works to Mitch McConnell and John Boehner?
You know, one of the things that happens, seriously, is people get captured by a system they've been in for too long. People get used to the status quo. It happens in all walks of life. I'm prepared to accept that most people who go to Washington are good people and who want to serve, but I've also seen it in politics, in business, in charity, in life. People settle into the status quo. And the people who protect the status quo most aggressively are those who have benefited from it. We have a lot of people in Washington who have benefited from the status quo, and they're the last people who are going to change it, which is why someone who understands how the status quo works but is not of it, and who can see it, and who has the courage to change it, has to come in and challenge the status quo.
I'm reminded, by the way, flipping through these cards, how many people we have from so many states. I'm trying to be diverse in states. Tim from Farmington, Pennsylvania, wants to know if you would describe your style of leadership.
Well, these are all such great questions. You know, I will begin by saying that people sometimes ask me, how did you go from being a secretary of a 9-person real estate firm to the chief executive of a $90 billion technology firm? And the truth is, I didn't have a plan to do that. But what I always did, because I like a challenge and I want to make a difference, is I would run to the problem. And every time I ran to the problem, I would find people who knew how to solve the problem. They just had never been asked. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we know how to solve our problems, but you haven't been asked enough. And so one of the things that I would do, my leadership style is to ask people who know how to solve the problem, unlock their potential so they can help solve it. And let me give you a very simple example of what I mean too, actually. I talked about the VA being a stain on our nation's honor. It is. You know what I would do? I would start by putting about 10 veterans in a room, and I would say to them, tell us how you want to be served. And you know what? Those 10 veterans and all of their fellow veterans that they would represent would give us a better blueprint for how to finally serve those who have served us than all the bureaucrats in Washington combined. Let me give you another simple example. I talked just a moment ago about zero-based budgeting and being able to fire people who watch pornography all day long instead of doing their jobs. That's not an idle example. We have Inspector General reports that tell us every several months that they find federal government employees who are watching porn all day long and pulling down the same pay, pension, and benefits as somebody trying to do a good job. Really? As Donald Trump would say, you're fired. The point is this: how do you get that done? How do you get that done? You get it done by asking the people what should be done. And you know who knows what should be done? You and citizens like you. And so I will go into the Oval Office regularly, once a week, for example, in a weekly radio address, and I will say to you, fellow citizens, please take out your smartphones. I'd like to ask you a couple questions. Question number one, do you think it's important that we know where your money is being spent? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. You know what, ladies and gentlemen? You may laugh, but that technology exists. We use it to vote for silly things like The Voice. We ought to use it to vote for the things that matter to this nation, and we will put pressure on the political system.
Ann from Atlanta asks, last night you indicated your willingness to have government surveil social media to help fight in the war on terror. What safeguards would you put in place to protect American citizens from the government surveilling them through social media?
Yes, and I think it's a really important question, because what I'm not talking about is broadly surveying everyone. That's a problem. What I am talking about, if you look at every single lone wolf terrorist-inspired attack that we have seen in this nation, from Major Hassan to the Boston Marathon bombers, every single one of those attacks, we had clues. People knew something was wrong. And when we know something is wrong and we have clues, we should be trying to figure out who these people are and what they're going to do next. Secondly, what I know from my background in technology is that if we are going to adequately detect and repel cyber attacks, and as we know, China and Russia have been using technology as a weapon against us. What's sad about what I just said is I served as the chairman of the advisory board of the Central Intelligence Agency. I have the highest security clearance available to a civilian, and so I can tell you with assurance that we have known for at least 12 years that the Chinese and the Russians had a plan to attack our systems and our databases. It is ineptitude that we could not detect or repel this. And in fact, we now know that the Inspector General went to the Office of Personnel Management. By the way, I'm quite sure the Chinese have my personal information because I've gotten so many clearances. But the point is, the Inspector General went to the Office of Personnel Management and said, these are vulnerabilities. You need to fix these things. They didn't get fixed. That's ineptitude, ladies and gentlemen. My point is this: in order to detect and repel in real time, we need some collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. Because the private sector has some very important tools in this battle, and so does the public sector. And so we need, for the right reasons, at the right times, for the private and public sectors to be able to talk about what's going on the internet, so our enemies cannot use this marvelous tool to attack us, which is what they're doing today.
Martin from West Windsor, New Jersey, wants to know, started the question on this side and rewrote it here. What will you do to engage Hispanic and black voters and woo them back to the party of Lincoln?
Let me start with what I won't do. I won't do what the Democrats do. The Democrats play identity politics. And they play identity politics by saying, okay, you're of this identity. You're in the African American group and you care about this issue, and you're Hispanic, so you care about that issue, and you're a woman, so you care about these issues, and then they pit those identity groups one against the other. Here's what I will do. I will start by saying to every American, regardless of their gender, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of the color of their skin, I will say to every American, each of us is gifted by God. No one of us is any better than any other one of us. All of us can live lives of dignity and purpose and meaning. In other words, I don't believe we should change our message depending on what you look like, but I do believe we need to point out that the policies that Democrats have pursued are demonstrably holding African Americans back and keeping them in poverty and tangling their lives up in webs of dependence. The Democrats purposely have never resolved the immigration issue. And if you doubt that, remember this, it is Democrats who sunk George Bush's comprehensive immigration reform plan with all its flaws. And when President Obama ran on solving the immigration problem, and he held the White House and the House and the Senate, did he do anything to resolve immigration? No, because he doesn't really want it resolved. He wants it to be a wedge issue. So we have to go step by step and disentangle people's lives from those webs of dependence. Instead of discouraging them, we encourage them to move forward. We need to solve the immigration problem by starting with what we should have done 30 years ago: secure the border. This isn't rocket science. And fix the legal immigration system for once and for all. And it's just an example of what I mean when I say, whatever your issue, your cause, the festering problem that you hoped would have been resolved by now, how long have we been talking about the border being insecure? 25 years. Every election cycle we hear about it again. It's still insecure. This is not rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. It takes money, manpower, but mostly, apparently, it takes political willpower. And certainly, it takes leadership from the Oval Office.
This is totally a softball question, but it's appropriate as the last question. Diane from Mooresville, Indiana says, what can the people in this room who like what they're hearing from you do to help your campaign?
Oh, Diane, we love you. I love all of you. They're great questions. So first, go on to carlyforpresident.com. Please go on to carlyforpresident.com and help me sign up. Sign up to, whether it's your treasure or your time or your network of people that you deal with. Look, at this time in previous presidential elections, the polls, the pundits, the money said Jimmy Carter couldn't win, Ronald Reagan couldn't win, Bill Clinton couldn't win, and Barack Obama couldn't win. You know why all of those men served as president? Because people decided they wanted them to win. This is going to be an election that you, the grassroots activists of this movement, decide. So help me, stand up and decide that we're going to take our government back. Ours was intended to be a citizen government, so citizens, let's take it back. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you. Thank you.
Carly Fiorina.